Welcome to our Web3 masterclass with Girls in Tech South Africa. This is the third in a series of four workshops related to blockchain, cryptocurrency, smart contracts, and NFTs. We will also do a session on how to stay safe in this blockchain and Web3 space in October sometime. So just a little bit of information about myself and Girls in Tech South Africa. I am Anushka Soma Patel. I am the co-MD for Girls in Tech South Africa. Girls in Tech South Africa is just one chapter out of about almost 60 chapters around the world. Girls in Tech is a global NGO, and we have about 60,000 members globally. Um, so have the license or the agreement to run the South African chapter, and our aim and our vision is really to close the gender gap in tech. And while we are called Girls in Tech South Africa, I really do welcome ladies and gentlemen, to all of our events and activities because I believe that you know, as South Africans, we can all learn from some of the amazing stuff that's happening in the world. And, by learning at that cutting edge or bleeding edge of things that are happening, we can definitely start being those leaders, for the rest of the world as time goes on. So I really want you to see this as a launch pad for you to do something great, irrespective of your gender. So thank you so much for joining us. Today we're joined by Kaine Bell-Cross. Kaine is Kaine is an enthusiast in the blockchain space. I mean, he, according to my understanding, has been at this from a very young age. And Kaine is also the co-founder and chief marketing officer for Forking Media. He's a business development and marketing professional for technologies, projects, and startups. And he's already raised over $100 million for startups to date. Kaine is also a radio personality for tech in South Africa and has been very active in the blockchain space since 2016, working with big projects such as Bitcoin.com and Toro.com and esports.com. But today we are going to leech off Kane and learn from his wisdom in smart contracts. I mean, he has got vast knowledge, but today we're going to learn about smart contracts from Kane. So over to you, Kane. Thanks so much for making time for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that introduction, and looking forward to helping you guys understand a little bit more about smart contracts. And I think even before we begin, what we're about to tackle can be understood as a complex topic, but the thing that really makes me confident in anyone's ability to learn about these complex topics is they're just not digestible in 5 minutes. Really, everything you learn in crypto, and because it changes so often, builds your generalized understanding of crypto. I've been in here a long time. I'm still learning every single day, and I hope to help you put your foot through the door in terms of understanding the following concepts that we're going to go over. So if you guys can pop on the presentation, I'll start going through it, and if at any moment you guys have any questions or you want to stop and have me go over something again, you're more than welcome to. But I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to try and break it down as simply as possible. But just bear in mind, it is a little bit complex. You might not get it instantly, but this is really going to be a good seed that you can water over time and grow your knowledge into the crypto space. So I can't see the presentation up at the moment, but if you can pop it up, I'll get going. Excellent. Thank you very much. So you can head over to the next slide. So this is what we're going to go over in the next few minutes. We're going to talk about, what are smart contracts? We're going to have a look at a little bit of a history in terms of where did smart contracts come from. We're also going to look at how they work in a very basic level. We're going to talk about some of the benefits and advantages of smart contracts, and obviously some of the limits and disadvantages of smart contracts. We're going to talk about the application of smart contracts, the future of smart contracts, and also specifically the smart contracts use cases in NFTs and how they play a role there. And then we're gonna conclude that. So you can head over to the next slide. So as you guys introduced me, I'm the co-founder and active CMO of Forking Media. But if we really break down what we do as a company, we turn complex ideas that are really in the base of their foundation, in the base of the conceptualization, and we turn it into essentially reality in the form of high quality content, visual design, and really an ability to describe these products in a way that anyone such as you and myself can understand them. We then market these topics across the world, and we raise money for these ideas and for these technologies. And then we get customers for these technologies. Once we raise money for them, we then build out that technology using the funding that we've ascertained. And then we get customers to actually utilize that technology. And we've done this rinse and repeat for quite some time now. And we've figured out some strategies that really work. So you can head over to the next slide. Before we start, we obviously have to understand what a contract is, because crypto has helped us make smart contracts, but we have to understand in general what a contract is. So it's essentially an agreement that's made between two or more parties that abide by the terms listed in it. It usually takes the form of a detailed document with several clauses and conditions that are signed on by all parties, and usually these contracts are enforced by law and written in human language. Contracts are really everywhere. And if you're a lawyer, you deal with contracts a lot. But if you're leasing or renting a home, you've got a contract, right? When you accept an offer to a new job, you've got a contract. Signing an employment contract, for example. Whenever you go shopping and you want to return a product, the employees will look into the return policy, which is a contract. And any insurance or financial agreements are also contracts. So when we talk about making these contracts smart, we're really building on what is already there, but we're doing it in such a way that there's no human interaction and it can be done in an automated fashion. So you can head over to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about what are smart contracts. So a smart contract is a program stored on blockchain that automatically enforces specific actions once predetermined conditions are met. In a decentralized system, two parties can interact by replacing the intermediary typically needed to facilitate these transactions with a smart contract. And blockchains, including Bitcoin and Ethereum, have used smart contracts to facilitate transactions and automate processes. This code enforces the contract, whereas traditional contracts are enforceable by law. And the way I like to think of smart contracts in a very simple way is like with vending machines. When you're running the code of a smart contract, you're choosing which functions to execute or which items you want to obtain from your vending machine. And sometimes these operations require a monetary compensation or some sort of like in a fee, which is called gas, and we'll get into that in a moment. Or other times they may be for free, which depends what type of smart contract that is. And we can head over to the next slide, which talks about why we call them smart contracts. So these chunks of code automate processes and don't make any human errors. Ultimately, they reduce the time and cost associated with traditional contracts. And apart from overcoming human errors, smart contracts possess other benefits that make them important to the blockchain industry. And on the next slide, which you can head to now, we talk about a lot of people confuse the term dApps and smart contracts, right? They use them interchangeably, but they're not really interchangeable. A smart contract is simply a piece of code that's stored on the blockchain, and a dApp, a decentralized application, connects the front end to the back end of that contract, and a dApp may use several smart contracts to run. So an example of smart contracts and dApps is you can use it in a field of voting for elections, for example. If you could count the number of votes towards each party and then make a final decision on who won, the smart contract would be immutable, meaning nobody would be able to change it, making it kind of entirely trustworthy. And a good example of a dApp that you may have heard of if you've navigated into crypto at all is something like MakerDAO. It is a financial system where you can lend and borrow money using cryptocurrencies, and MakerDAO has a front end that communicates with the back end and uses several smart contracts. Now, bear with me as we go through this because it might sound confusing, but I promise you it does get a lot simpler than that. So on the next slide, let's take a look at the history of smart contracts. Where did they come from? And I think you'd be surprised at how long ago the idea of smart contracts came about. So the original smart contract on a distributed ledger was envisioned by Nick Spazzo or Sasbo, a cryptographer in 1994. And by smart contract, he meant a set of promises written digitally, including protocols which the parties perform on their promises. However, the term smart contract was rarely used until 2008 when Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, introduced the concept of Bitcoin. Later, in 2015, the concept of smart contracts were popularized by Ethereum. And in the present day, they are being used for a variety of tasks. And here's something that I can say that's very interesting. So when Bitcoin was created, Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum, envisioned the idea of implementing these smart contracts within Bitcoin in a much more global scale. And he approached some of the developers of Bitcoin and tried to convince them that this would be a system that would work very well for Bitcoin. But ultimately, it didn't really come to fruition. So he went out on his own and he created Ethereum, which is now basically the second most popular cryptocurrency in the world. And it's the reason why so many businesses have been able to build on top of crypto instead of just using it as a point of sale. Traditionally, you would send some Bitcoin somewhere, and in exchange, you would receive a product, just like you would use normal cash. But Ethereum introduced a concept which was much more complex than that, but also much more utility driven. There was a lot more you could do with the Ethereum blockchain than you could do with the Bitcoin blockchain. They serve different use cases. So on the next one, let's take a look at how smart contracts work, right? Smart contracts are comprised of three components. You can just head to the next slide there. We lose the presentation. There we go. Perfect. So smart contracts are composed of three components: the parties, people involved, the subject of the contract, and the terms and conditions that apply to this particular contract. And each smart contract is put onto the blockchain that is broadcasted to the entire network, and it has an address. The code is executable on every node of the network. If you know a little bit about cryptocurrency, you'll know a lot of it runs on nodes, and basically all the nodes work together to create a network. And if one node drops out, all the other nodes carry the rest of the work. If 99% of the nodes drop out, the 1% of the nodes carry the work, but the system remains intact. And each node has the history of all smart contracts, the history of all transactions, and the current state of a smart contract. A dApp is an interface for people to be able to interact with the smart contract. It allows you to interface with it. It consists of the front end and the API to interact with the smart contracts, and a smart contract provides a way for a dApp to interact with the blockchain as well. So on the next slide, let's talk about what is gas. We spoke about it very briefly, but if you know what Satoshi is, for those of you who don't know what a Satoshi is, a Satoshi is the minimum divisible amount that Bitcoin can be broken up into. Just like rands, we have cents, we have 99 of them. And if you get 100, you get 1 rand. But in Bitcoin, you have 100 million cents essentially. So you have 100 million Satoshi for every Bitcoin. And when Vitalik introduced the concept of gas, which is a fee that the developer of the smart contract has to pay for executing any operation on the Ethereum platform, it encourages programmers to make their smart contracts as efficient as possible so they pay the least fee possible. But if someone writes a very inefficient code, or worst case, creates an infinite loop in the smart contract, it may slow down the network temporarily until the developer of the smart contract runs out of gas. Gas is like the money you use to perform the computation that's derived in the smart contract. This structure allows something like Solidity to use loops while keeping the blockchain running smoothly. The unit for measuring gas price is a thing called WEI, or WEI. And every operation run on a smart contract on the Ethereum network is translated into the number of WEI consumed and charged to the developer. 1 WEI is 10 to the power of negative 18 of Ethereum, which really it means 1 quadrillionth of 1 Ethereum, and the cryptocurrency used on the Ethereum blockchain. So a Y or WEI is to Ethereum what Satoshi is to Bitcoin. So you have 100 million Satoshi for every Bitcoin, you have 100 million Y to every Ethereum coin. So when we understand that, we can talk a little bit about the benefits and advantages of smart contracts. So I think this will really be what starts painting that picture for you if you don't fully understand already. So head over to the next slide. Perfect. So some of the benefits and advantages of smart contracts, the first one is it removes intermediaries. So smart contracts remove the need for intermediaries and allow direct and transparent relationships between all parties involved. So if you think about it like this, if you were going to go rent a house and you were doing that through the agent, essentially you would remove the agent from the equation and you would deal directly with the owner, but the contract would all be handled digitally. There's also efficiency. So smart contracts use software code to automate tedious tasks and related paperwork, thus saving time and money. This automation of tasks also helps avoid human error, something that can really cause a detrimental result for someone who's going into contract with someone. Read the fine print. We always say that. So security. As documents are stored in encrypted form on an immutable ledger, they are highly secure, with a low probability of misuse or tampering because the data is stored in chronological order. Tracking and auditing that data becomes very, very easy. And also decentralization. Because your data is stored on all nodes on the network, even though one node goes down or fails, the other nodes can back it up. So you'll never be able to truly stop a smart contract from working unless you remove all the nodes associated to the Ethereum network, and that is a very challenging task. So you can move over to the next slide for me. Perfect. They facilitate transactions in a trustless system, which means ensuring that parties can interact without knowing or needing to trust each other. And they are immutable and cannot be changed after deployment, making them more secure. So once a smart contract is published, you can't change it again. It stays exactly like it is. And everybody in the world, if it's on a public blockchain, can read it. And we call that transparency. So they are also deterministic and only perform what they've been programmed to do. You can't convince a smart contract to do something that you haven't programmed into it. That said, smart contracts are not actually legally binding, unlike traditional contracts. This means that while these lines of code help execute outcomes on a blockchain, they cannot enforce off-chain agreements. So you can't take someone to court because you use their smart contract. Not yet, at least, right? Now, onto the next slide. Let's talk about a bit about the limits and disadvantages of smart contracts, which I think is something that isn't often discussed, right? Everyone kind of talks about the benefits, but there are still some hurdles for us. So the lack of international recognition. So decentralized transactions without third parties are not lawfully recognized in several countries. Also, the laws are still not matured enough where they are recognized. This lack of regulation makes it very difficult for full adoption to occur. They're immutable, which means as soon as a smart contract is put on the blockchain, it can't be changed, which is also a disadvantage. There is less flexibility in situations such as addressing a bug in a smart contract or a future change needing to take place in the code in the smart contract. The only way for you to change the code would be for you to add a new copy of the smart contract onto the blockchain. So unfortunately, once a smart contract's out there, if it has a vulnerability, it tends to get really hurt. And we've seen this in the past. If you look at some horror stories in crypto, there's been some hacks where some smart contracts were abused. And this is exactly why. So new technology as well. The technology is still relatively new, and its implications are still not fully assessed in several of its use cases. So it needs to gain a wider trust as it becomes more mature. Heading over to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the applications of smart contracts. So smart contracts have the potential to be used in almost every aspect of our life, whether it's healthcare, finance, banking, in industries, in real estate, and in governments and private sectors. But below are a few applications of smart contracts that we can talk about. So when we take banking or insurance into consideration, many projects are being developed that are looking to transform banking to run on blockchain technology. These projects that are mainly dApps, such as Meld and MakerDAO, will inherently need smart contracts to eliminate the need for intervention of a third party. In the field of insurance, smart contracts can be used for error checking, routing, and issuing payments efficiently. They achieve this by using a decentralized, immutable ledger for bookkeeping and minimizing the risk of fraud. In the next slide, We'll also talk about healthcare, how smart contracts are applied in healthcare. So they can be used to automate payment systems for healthcare. It can record all healthcare transactions and bills on a blockchain and create transparency between the patient and the healthcare provider and the insurance company by creating a single view. These records could be stored in an encoded form to address data security and privacy concerns. Only those to which these records belong will be able to access it. In real estate, transactions involve great amounts of commission to the real estate agents and fees to the lawyers who help the buyer or seller to perform the transactions to transfer the ownership of the property. These commissions and fees to the middleman can be eliminated with the use of smart contracts. One can build complex logic in a smart contract that ensures that all clauses of the agreement are met before the transfer of ownership occurs. These transactions will be recorded on an immutable ledger to minimize the opportunity for fraud. And on the next slide, we talk about in management, how a smart contract can help in management. So in a decentralized autonomous organization, or a DAO, smart contracts can be used to make decisions on behalf of humans based on complex conditional logic built into them. For example, if the supply of raw material goes below a certain threshold, a smart contract can trigger an order to the supplier or manufacturer to deliver a new shipment of raw materials, happening on an automated basis, demand versus supply, keeping your stock up to date. So on the next slide, let's talk about the future of smart contracts. So the adoption of smart contracts in the future depends on how well we address the challenges listed, right? The simpler and more straightforward conventional contracts may be easily standardized into smart contract templates. However, the more complicated contracts that require frequent changes due to their unique nature and changing circumstances may have to stay conventional until we find common ground to address some of the above problems. As this technology matures, we will see more and more uses of smart contracts in various aspects of our day-to-day lives. On the next slide, let's talk about something you might not have known. So, did you know that NFTs live on the blockchain and are managed with the help of smart contracts? When you buy or sell an NFT, you're most likely relying on smart contracts to execute that trade. NFTs are created by a process known as minting, which involves converting images, videos, sound bites, and other digital files into crypto assets on a blockchain. Essentially, when you mint NFTs, you're configuring the underlying smart contract code that decides the qualities of your crypto assets. Several standards have been established for smart contracts to ensure that NFTs can easily interact with applications. For instance, there are several smart contracts and smart contract blockchains with NFT creation tools like Tron, EOS, or EOS, and Tezos. Without a common standard of how smart contracts and ultimately NFTs should be coded, NFTs minted on different platforms may not be able to be traded on the same NFT marketplaces. And that's a little bit of a complex one. But ultimately, you got to just take it as it is. Smart contracts and NFTs are all built very uniquely. Sometimes when you're building a system to trade and purchase those NFTs, you can't cater to every single type of code, and you definitely can't build smart contracts to interact with every single possible chain and their code variations. So let's take a look at the next slide. Let's take a look at standards of smart contracts for creating NFTs. Among the various standards available in the crypto space, Ethereum's ERC-721 standard is one of the most widely used, and it's the first non-fungible token standard on Ethereum. For anyone who doesn't understand what an ERC-721 standard is, or you've never heard ERC, any coin, most of the time, that's built on top of Ethereum is an ERC-20 coin, right? And Ethereum was built to support many different types of coins. And these types of coins, these ERC-721 coins, have a specific use case, a non-fungible token standard. As a pioneer in the NFT minting space, this standard is used by many to create and launch NFTs. ERC-721 requires all tokens to be non-fungible and to possess unique token IDs, a requirement that other standards may not enforce. But apart from ERC-721, is another standard used mainly within the NFT gaming realm, which is an ERC-1155 standard. And this was created to accomplish both fungible assets like in-game currencies and non-fungible assets like limited edition skins. For those of you who don't understand the difference right off the bat between a fungible asset and a non-fungible asset, really a currency is a fungible asset. If I have one Ethereum and I send it to you, that one Ethereum isn't that one unique Ethereum. It doesn't have a unique ID because I can collect 100 million WEI and now I have an Ethereum. So that's essentially a fungible token, but something that's non-fungible has a unique identifier. So a non-fungible token would be like a limited edition one of one NFT. That would be a non-fungible token. So on to the next slide. Let's talk about smart contracts, NFTs, and the metaverse. Let's look towards the future a little bit and and consider what this realm would look like. So the metaverse can be considered a three-dimensional digital universe bridging financial, virtual, and physical worlds. NFTs, blockchain games, and crypto as we know and use would all be a part of this metaverse. In smart contract, if smart contracts are the foundation of NFTs, it's not surprising that they are also a vital tool in building the metaverse. For instance, NFT art and gaming are two potential aspects of the current metaverse landscape that smart contracts can support. Monetary transactions can also be facilitated with smart contracts, eliminating the need for a third party and reducing the friction of interactions on the metaverse. On the next slide, let's take a look at some NFT-related use cases for smart contracts. So, the next slide. Perfect, thank you very much. Enforcing ownership and verifying authenticity is one use case, one NFT-related use case for smart contracts. So smart contracts used to issue NFTs can help enforce ownership and authenticate data. If these NFTs are hosted on a public blockchain, information about ownership and creation time can be assessed or accessed by anyone. In the case of digital degrees, unique NFTs can be issued to students by educational institutions on public blockchains. Employers looking to hire students can check the authenticity of an applicant's degree by searching on the relevant block explorer. The search engine allows anyone to access public information recorded on the blockchain. This can also be extended to NFT licensing. Details of transferred rights of an image or sound file can be created and easily transferred to the next NFT token holder. Anyone can check both the ownership and rights license to the buyer. Here's an interesting thing. So I'm not too sure if the Bored Ape Yacht Club has specific plagiarism use, but there is actually a collection of NFTs. I wish I could remember it now off the top of my head, which you're not allowed to use. You're not actually allowed to use that NFT for public or public revenue. You can't make commercial revenue off of the NFT, even though you bought it and you own the rights to it. If you read the contract, you'll see that you're not allowed to actually commercialize this product, put it on a t-shirt and sell the t-shirt, which you would expect to be something that you're able to do. But if it does say in the code that you are allowed to commercialize it, you can actually buy the NFT, use that digital media, and actually commission it and make money off of it, which I think is really cool. So over on the next slide, let's talk about preventing plagiarism and counterfeiting. So through NFTs, smart contracts can also help combat counterfeiting and plagiarism because they are built on the blockchain. Smart contracts can automatically check an NFT or a token's time and place of creation, the first recorded wallet address, for example, and smart contracts can also track creative ownership, combat fake certificates, and help eliminate the issue of counterfeit products. For instance, such products can be automatically filtered out if they do not meet certain prerequisites. And I always like to use this example. I think it's a very good example, right? If you're browsing through TikTok or YouTube, someone says to you, I'm a doctor, listen to me, drink this water with this ingredient and you'll be healthy. And you say, well, he's a doctor, I better take his word for it. But if he studied at a place that minted him an NFT that said this person is certified in this field, you could go onto the blockchain and verify that education. Whereas what I can do is if I really wanted to scam you, I could go and get someone's certificate to say he's a doctor, and I can scratch it out, put my name there, print a copy, meet all the standards so that it looks real, and I can show you that picture, and you would say, oh, look at that, he's really a doctor. But I'm not. And that's really how an NFT can change the way that we authenticate people and their certificates of education and experience. So over on the next slide, let's take a look at facilitating business transactions. So with NFT smart contracts, business transactions can be improved in two ways: speed and efficiency. Smart contracts allow two parties to enter an agreement and ensure that the previously agreed upon outcome is enforced with the terms that have been met. Delays due to lack of trust can be eliminated, allowing a more efficient transaction process. Parties may not trust each other, but can be reassured with a smart contract that will carry out the transaction as soon as the contract terms have been met. Consider the process of buying a house. As soon as the buyer has met all the requirements like credit checks and successful down payments, a smart contract can release funds to the seller and transfer ownership to the buyer simultaneously. The transaction, which could include the transfer of title deed, will also be recorded on the blockchain for easy verification. And let's talk about in conclusion, right? So this is bringing it to the end of this particular presentation. So in conclusion, smart contracts are very versatile and can be customized to be applied to almost any industry. As the building blocks for one of the hottest digital asset classes out there, the importance of smart contracts is likely to grow with further NFT adoption and expansion of the metaverse. Thank you very much, guys. That's the end of that. I'm available now for some questions if you guys have any.
Fantastic, Ken. Thanks so much. I mean, that was really informative. Um, And, I've been looking at cryptocurrency and blockchain since about 2018, and I didn't really get into smart contracts and NFTs. So I understand the high level concepts. And I think there were a lot of points I could tick and go, okay, still the same, still the same. But I think you definitely went a little level deeper for me to get more insight. So even I learned something today. Thank you so much for that.
Fantastic.
Before we take questions, can we quickly switch on cameras so that we can get a picture for Girls in Tech, please?
Let's do it.
All of you can switch on cameras.
Nice.
Lekker. Tina, you can also switch on your camera, Tina. Hey, Gerda. Oh,
With
Tina's
a with
done.
with a bad hair day, hey?
Looking good. Okay, let's get that picture, Tina, and then we can move on with the questions. Fun. Thank you. Thanks so much for that. Thanks for being brave and switching on your cameras. Okay, so questions. Who has the first question?
Can I go?
Yes,
Yeah.
you can.
This is all very fascinating and sounds very complex. But if you take a stand, just stand back, it makes a lot of sense in terms of how the world has been evolving. Papaya and know your client and blah blah blah. We know all of the governance surrounding doing business, but I can see the value in using this type of technology because it appears to be one to one where we already trust each other. And the smart contract is just putting it into online legal writing, unless I'm missing the point here.
You are correct. You are correct. So, unfortunately, obviously, you can't use a smart contract in court, to say, I met the terms of the contract. We hope that from a legal perspective, that will evolve in time, but it really does do a great job of eliminating the middleman and allowing things to happen. And it's really, how long is a piece of string? You can create a contract that can do almost anything. And the important part to remember with smart contracts is you're in essence telling the Ethereum network what to do once money is received. So, with that supply chain example, if my system at my business detects that I'm low on a particular stock, in my smart contract, I can write that if my stock drops between this level it will automatically send a payment to an end receiver, and that funds will be received, validated, and automatically couriered unto me, obviously with some human intervention for the parcel transfer. But it's a great point. You can't beat the power of a smart contract, and just being able to have a trustless system where you can do things. And where smart contracts were used a lot, especially when I was getting into crypto, was in fundraising events like initial coin offerings, which were the start of fundraising initiatives in crypto. You could, in essence, say, okay, I want to start a business, and in my business, I want to accept a specific currency, a currency that I will create myself on Ethereum. I know that there's going to be buy pressure for my coin and sell pressure for my coin because of the services that I'm rendering and the demand for those services. And I can then go about saying, okay, if I'm going to create a coin, I can create 100 million of this coin, and I want to raise money. I want to allow this coin to be purchased by people before my idea is live in the market. And you can build a smart contract that would say, if I receive money from someone, based on the amount of money I receive and the market price at that current time, I will automatically mint X amount of tokens and send it unto the receiver. And that basically stops you from having to say, okay, I've just received 0.0045 Ethereum. That calculation means I need to send them this much of my coin. And then you go to your wallet and you sign the transaction with your private keys and you send it off, and you do that 100,000 times. You're gonna go blue in the face because you've got so much work to do. But that is all automated. It's all streamlined. It's all automated. Just happens by itself.
Okay, sorry. I just want to finalize this in terms, and maybe it sounds very simple, but it means, let's say I've got this great idea, I form a company, and I issue shares and get capital, and then eventually when things starts going well, I can start selling these shares. But on the other end, if I go this route, it becomes quite efficient, take out the middleman, and it's all about using the technology. Do I understand it correctly?
You're correct. And when ICOs started, when initial coin offerings started, a lot of people assumed that what they were buying was a percentage of the company. And in a lot of ways, if my company is receiving my currency and there's 100 million of them, and someone comes and buys all 100 million, they in essence own the only thing that can be used to transact with my company. But it doesn't entitle you to the profits of the company like a traditional stock would. But that's when security tokens were introduced. So when a security token is introduced, that is what allows you access to the profit of the company. So you can decide, do I want to sell the transactional currency of my company, or do I want to sell the security token of my company, which will allow people, if I own 25% of the security tokens, it entitles me to 25% of the profits of the company, just like you would see in the traditional stock world.
Do you have a follow-up question, Rika?
I think I could ask a million more questions, but I know there's an audience, so I'll connect with Kaine. But great, thank you for answering the question, because being from a investment banking background, I can see so much application. And I think it's all about being secured, definitely, but also a unique way of actually making more money, because you remove that layer of so-called governance and having to share the cake. And I guess, yes, that's why you cannot stand up in court at the moment, but I bet you it's only time before it will stand up in a court of law.
So just before we move on to the next question, I'll tell you something that's very interesting. So there's been talks about a central bank digital currency being created. And the interesting thing about that is what it really is programmable money. And something that they can do with that programmable money is they can program how you're allowed to spend that money through smart contracts. So we talk about smart contracts and we say they're great, they're awesome, and they are, but they can also be used in a negative way. So if a central bank digital currency is started and they pre-program it that you're not allowed to spend your money
Absolutely.
outside of the country instead of a local business, they can do that. And that's it's concerning and it's worrying, but that's where we're going into. So it's all about informing people and building that general understanding so that people don't just get funneled into the central bank digital currency system that they have no idea how it operates, and they just get forced into essentially having their money controlled. That's something
Absolutely.
that's happening now.
Absolutely.
You could see that two ways, though. You could see that as you having your money controlled in a positive or a negative sense. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that's quite an interesting viewpoint. And I'll give you a positive way in which currency or tokens have been used. There's a project called Grassroots Economics, and the lady created cryptocurrency for every community. And this is in Kenya. I mean, communities that she worked with, which is basically started as a voucher based system. But when she came across blockchain technology, she converted the physical paper vouchers to cryptocurrency. And because people were indicating what they're spending their cryptocurrency on, she could analyze and see, oh, this community is spending a lot of money on water. Why are they spending so much money on water? So she visits the place and she realizes there's a lot of old people in the community, and the old people are paying the youngsters to walk all the way to the water source and bring them some water. So, with that information, she actually went to the authorities to say, can you please come and have a look at what's happening in this community? And they actually built piped water to the communities, to the place where they lived. So it could also be used in a positive way. Just an example that I wanted to share. So we do have three questions that we'd like to get through from the audience. The one is, when do you use smart contracts? And I'd like to, amend to that, like, as opposed to the normal contracts that we know of today.
So I think whenever you want to use a smart contract, you want to achieve something more efficiently, faster, and not have to be on both sides of the coin. So essentially, why you would use a smart contract is to automate a process that happens almost identically over and over again, but always requires manual labor and has room for human error. Our goal is to remove the ability for human error to occur, especially in a financial realm. So you would use a smart contract to, number one, make transactions faster and make the process of executing the contract faster, and also removing any risk of human error, which could be absolutely detrimental to an individual on the other side of the contract.
Thanks, Kane. That does make sense. What kind of jobs can I get after this class?
That's a very good question. And it's kind of, how long is a piece of string kind of question. Um, what kind of jobs can you get? Well, if you really like the idea of smart contracts, you can study Solidity and learn how to write them, and you could get a job writing smart contracts for businesses. If you're really good at writing smart contracts, you can get a job auditing other people's smart contracts and looking for errors in the code. Or you can just build a business that utilizes smart contracts to make things cheaper and turn a profit like that. But ultimately, crypto in general as an industry is kind of like mainstream. Everyone talks about crypto like, you got beauty and you got financial industry and you got the health industry and then you got crypto. But crypto houses all traditional industries. So if you love healthcare, you can go work for a project that's building a healthcare-based initiative in crypto with smart contracts, and you could do it like that. I worked with a company a while ago that had such a cool idea regarding NFTs, but they were so early to the space that it just didn't take off. I still firmly believe if they launched in 2020 or 2021, would have been a different story. But they were a company called Publica. And what Publica was doing was phenomenal for authors, people who write books and sell ebooks. They used, when I was speaking about the non-fungible ERC-721 token that has a unique identifier, they were using that as what they called a read token. So if you owned this specific token, this unique token, you could go read an ebook. and you could buy that token to read an ebook. And as long as you had that token in your wallet, you could read the ebook. But this is where it gets really interesting. So if you look at a author today writing publications or even selling ebooks on Amazon, for example, um, he would sell the book once, or he would get um, purchased by a publisher, or the rights to the book purchased by a publisher, and he would make a once-off amount of money that he would have to last until his next book. That publisher would then distribute the book and aggregate income for themselves and make their money back. But then the people who are reading the book would go to a second-hand store and sell the book. The author doesn't make any money when that second-hand book is sold, even the third time or the fourth time or the fifth time, as it lives for 5, 10 years. But with Publica, you were able to resell your read token, meaning that the author was making money every single time that book passed hands. And that's just an example of how that functionality can disrupt an industry and make good change.
Wow, absolutely. That's an amazing use case. I wonder if they'd come back now that
I
NFTs
hope
are
so.
booming, right?
Fingers crossed.
So just to complement, what Kane has said, um, this is an intro to smart contracts, and we're running a series of intro sessions so that you have the basic language and understanding of blockchain, cryptocurrency, smart contracts, and NFTs. And later in the year, Girls in Tech South Africa will run a how to create your own your own NFT collection workshop. And so when we do that workshop, you will have to understand these concepts. But that will be your opportunity to use this knowledge to launch your own thing. So, you can get creative and start your own art collection or start creating pieces of art using different tools that's available to you. But Sonia will go through a whole lot of steps to take you from this is what you need to do from A to Z to create and launch your NFT collection. So please stay in touch, see what's happening in the Girls in Tech South Africa space, and then please apply for the workshop. We'd probably have limited numbers, so you'd want to get in there as soon as you see the advert. We have another question. What impact will smart contracts have in business today and in the future? You may have covered some of this.
Sure. So I think it will disrupt. It's disruptive in nature. It's going to disrupt certain industries. And just like as an example with, being able to purchase a house and all the commissionable fees that you have to pay, it's going to solve these problems that we traditionally are very used to. We're very used to some of these problems, and we just kind of take them as normal. And that's where we're going to be seeing the biggest disruption in our traditional day-to-day life. It's on the things that we you just don't know about them until a solution comes along, right? Like the Publica example I just gave you now. Nobody wants to give the author money when they sell it at a second-hand store, and the process of implementing that change is mind-boggling. But when you have a system like this that's created, all of a sudden, oh, we can solve that problem. That's not a hard problem to solve, and that's really where you're going to see the biggest change. Clever thinkers, entrepreneurs, identifying this functionality and applying it to businesses and systems and business funnels that exist traditionally.
Fantastic, Ken. Thank you for that great answer. I think what you're also making us realize here is that the knowledge we gained today will help us see business processes that we traditionally just participate in, design, develop, and execute. um, you might give us a different lens today, to design different types of systems. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us here at Girls in Tech South Africa today. We really appreciate your time and your knowledge, especially your knowledge. And I'm sure that the other members that have a look at these videos later on will also learn a lot. So all I'm going to say is please stay tuned and please feel free to join our programs. We really look for opportunities to give to you so that you can become a girl in tech if you're not already. Um, and so that you can really make your tech career take off from here. So take care, have a nice evening, and all the best to all of you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your
Thanks
day.
a
Bye
lot.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.